Welcome, young Democrats and Republicans. September 11th was over 10 years ago, and now our fear is beginning to subside. We need to revisit the U.S. Patriot Act and the extent to which we should allow the government to impose on our civil liberties. Following the terrorist attacks of September 11th, the ensuing panic that resulted from a direct attack on American soil led to the need for a higher sense of domestic security. On October 21, 2001, President George W. Bush signed the USA Patriot Act into effect. The act was passed almost unanimously. In 2002, 47% of Americans felt that it was okay for the government to violate civil liberties in the pursuit of terrorists, whereas in 2011, only 25% of the population felt that way. Although support was dropping, former President George W. Bush's speech called for the reauthorization of the act.
So my message to the Congress is clear. This is no time to let our guard down, and no time to roll back good laws. The Patriot Act is expected to expire, but the terrorist threats will not expire. I expect, and the American people expect, the United States Congress and the United States Senate to renew the Patriot Act without weakening our ability to fight terror, and they need to get that bill to my desk soon.
As she addressed the Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security, Maureen A. Baginski, Executive Assistant Director of Intelligence of the FBI, stated, "Provisions of the USA Patriot Act are critical to implementing the congressional mandate for an information sharing environment. In summary, the information sharing provisions of the USA Patriot Act are vital to our national security." In the words of the former Democratic Vice President Al Gore, "I believe the Patriot Act has turned out to be, on balance, a terrible mistake, and that it became a kind of Tonkin Gulf resolution conferring Congress blessing for this president's assault on civil liberties. Therefore, I believe strongly that the few good features of this law should be passed again in a new, smaller law, but that the law should be repealed." Republican Rand Paul also communicated opposition towards the act.
There's been a lot of discussion of the Patriot Act, and we're told basically that we wouldn't be able to capture these terrorists if we didn't give up some of our liberties, if we didn't give up some of the Fourth Amendment and allow it to be easier for the police to come into our homes. We were so frightened after 9/11 that we readily gave up these freedoms. We said, well, the Fourth Amendment's not that important. We'll just let the government look at all of our records, and we'll make it easier for the government to look at our records. The question you have to ask, though, is whether or not we would still be able to catch terrorists by using the Fourth Amendment as it was intended and having the...
Recently, Senators Ron Wyden and Mark Udall wrote to Attorney General Eric Holder regarding the transparency of the Patriot Act. Americans expect their government to operate within the boundaries of publicly understood laws, and as voters they have a need and a right to know how the law is being interpreted, so that they can ratify or reject decisions made on their behalf. The senators believe that Americans should know the extent to which law enforcement has been using the provisions of the Patriot Act. They believe that most Americans would be stunned to know how Section 215 has been used. The American Civil Liberties Union also believes that people should be informed about how the Act is being used. They specifically disagree with Sections 215, 206, and 6001 of the Act. Another organization that is concerned with usage of the Act is the CCAPA. They believe that the Patriot Act is an indirect contradiction to Amendments 1 and 4 of the Bill of Rights. Four suspects affiliated with Al-Qaeda were in the process of trading cocaine for 9,000 AK-47s among other assault rifles and weapons. Through the provisions of the Patriot Act, U.S. officials probed numerous emails, which resulted in the detainment and prosecution of these men. 6 Yemeni Americans from upstate New York attended a 6-week al-Qaeda training camp in 2001, in which they were taught how to use guns and explosives. After an anonymous tip, the FBI placed them under surveillance using the Patriot Act, and they were later placed under arrest and pled guilty. Following their arrests, U.S. Attorney Mike Battle stated, "The law broke down the walls that barred FBI agents investigating criminal matters and intelligence matters from sharing information." NYPD were found to be monitoring the communications and activities of Muslim groups in and around the tri-state area. After much public controversy, the Muslim community responded with outrage.
As Americans, the Muslim community feels betrayed because of this illegal and unconstitutional surveillance that's being conducted. And we're here to put a human face on it. I'm an attorney and I'm an American, and everyone here behind me is an American, and we're proud of our country. And we do not question the right of any law enforcement agency to conduct legal and valid leads and to follow legal and valid searches, but to conduct blanket surveillance based on ethnicity and religion is unconstitutional and it's un-American.
If there was any...
A prominent Muslim academic, Tariq Ramadan, was preparing to become a tenured professor of religion within the United States. Yet upon preparation for travel, the U.S. government revoked his visa because of a provision of the Patriot Act that allows for the barring of foreigners who use a position of prominence within any country to endorse or espouse terrorist activity. Later, the charges were dropped and he was allowed entry into the U.S. Do you feel comfortable knowing the government could be monitoring you? What about monitoring a potential terrorist?